Any number of people have attempted to modify regular gasoline engines and to make them into steam engines. This is a Volkswagen, an old flat 4 air-cooled Volkswagen engine converted to a two-cylinder steam engine. This is the end of your crankshaft right here. We have two cylinders here. The two cylinders back here were left out. And the reason is that a steam engine acts like a two-cycle engine in the sense that it has a power stroke every time the piston goes down. So you only need half the displacement for a steam engine to have the same power as a gasoline engine. And so that is why this only has the two cylinders. There have been Volkswagens and even Corvair engines converted to steam in which they have either 4 or 6 cylinders, and they make obviously more power, obviously take more steam. This was converted by a fellow named Pete Barrett out in West Covina, a suburb of Los Angeles, back in the 60s. And he has everything that you need. He has an oiler up here that injects oil into the steam line for lubrication. Obviously has an alternator for making electricity. Has this red thing right here is a centrifugal separator that works exactly like a cream separator to dairy. And this separates the oil from the water because there's always some steam leaks past the piston rings, gets down into the crankcase, and anytime you mix oil and water, you get mayonnaise, and it doesn't work very well. If you use non-emulsifying oil, it works better and you can separate it out. The oil was continuous. The steam went through a radiator or a condenser, and then it went through this centrifugal separator, separated the oil from the water, and that way the lubrication worked and everything else worked fairly well. The reason that the air-cooled engines, Volkswagen or Corvair, were favored for converting to steam is they had individual cylinders. And that made it really handy because you don't want to, when making a steam engine, you don't want to have to make large castings with multiple cylinders in them. It's better to just make one casting, make one cylinder at a time, and then bolt it onto the crankcase. Here's what the end of the cylinders look like. This one has poppet valves. There are poppet valves for intake, poppet valves for exhaust. And this is a cam box here that has the cam. Excuse me, I had said it had the oiler. It has the cam in it, which runs these various, actuates the poppet valves and lets the steam in, lets the steam out. This is your exhaust manifold here. The advantage of the old-time steam cars like the Stanley was that it did not need a transmission, did not need a clutch, did not need gears, did not need a reverse gear. Everything was done with just valves. Pete Barrett theorized that by the time they came along in the 1960s, 70 years after they started making steam cars, they had in the interim perfected such things as clutches, electric starters, transmissions, and that what person might as well use all of that and not have to make that from scratch. In other words, you make a steam engine that acts with the same RPM, same torque as a gasoline engine, and then it runs through the same drivetrain as a regular 4-cycle engine. So here's the ring gear. In fact, this engine was set up originally to still have the electric starter, which started it because it was originally designed for bash valves instead of poppet valves, and that is not self-starting. And so you have to start it with the regular electric starter, which is easy enough to do. It's very effective. They've perfected them. And then it goes through your clutches here, goes through the bell housing, goes through the transmission, and the rest of the drivetrain is the same as the original. And this thing just sits in the car where the original engine set in. The boiler, the burner, the condenser were all crammed in all around it to fit. It was a little tight when you make them at first. You can see here's a cylinder which is made from a cast iron cylinder liner. And all you do is put these 4 threaded rods through here, which hold everything together. The head is here, the crankcase is here, and in fact is the original crankcase is used, and the original crankshaft, connecting rods, pistons, wrist pins, the whole thing is original, so you don't have to make them. All you do is find a cylinder liner to buy, same diameter as your pistons. You machine a piece of 1 inch or 3/4 inch thick steel plate for the head, put all the valves into it, bolt the whole thing together, and you have a steam engine. This is one of many ways to do things. Most people are making these things themselves in their garage. They do not, if you're going into mass production and making hundreds of thousands of these a year, you then do everything from castings, and you have automatic machining done to them. But these were made by people by themselves with a modest machine shop, and the fact that it works at all is the miracle. This right here is another engine converted to steam. It's laying on its side. Your 2 cylinders are up here, and you can see it is infinitely more complex in the valve gear. You have a push rod coming up from the camshaft over here, comes up through this. You have a rocker arm, a poppet valve in here, and there are various ways to get it to work. And here again, somebody with very little money, very little machining capability was able to make an engine that more or less worked. If you look over here from this side, you can see the original oil pan, which has cooling fins on it, which is something that you don't really need for steam. But if you're going to use the original IC engine material, this is what is done. And what we are doing is not necessarily showing you the best optimum steam engine design. We're showing you that when people really want to have a steam engine and they have limited resources, they make it out of whatever they can find and whatever they can do. And this is an example of it.